Autoimmune conditions are absolutely exploding. And as a clinician, I see people with them more and more often, and they're being told by medical professionals that the best they can do is suppress or manage these symptoms. Now, nothing on this show is medical advice or meant to be taken as a substitute for. But what I do like to do is provide people with information so they can make their own informed decisions and possibly find other avenues and ways of healing that their medical professional may not be informing them of. Now, personally, I have dealt with a Hashimoto's diagnosis. I was given this in my mid-30s. And I've been able to completely reverse this and had zero antibodies for years now. I did recently test TPO and TPA antibodies when my good friend Dr. Sarah Pugh was here, and we made a little bit of a game of running labs to experiment and see what factors might impact numbers on lab results. And labs, they can be helpful, but they're not always the full picture of what's going on with the person. Nevertheless, today I have a conversation that I'm sharing with you that I did with my good friend Irene Lyon over on Instagram, all about the aspect of trauma and the nervous system and how this plays into autoimmune conditions. I will also let you know that as a clinician, I have yet to speak with someone who has an autoimmune condition that doesn't have some element of trauma or nervous system dysregulation at play as well. And for me to reverse my own Hashimoto's, and I've seen this in many people, I have many people in my private membership group that have gone through my 21-day leptin reset program who have reversed autoimmune conditions, gotten their antibodies down to zero or to very, very low numbers after seeing them as high as 1,000 or more. There is a lifestyle component, there is a nutrition component, there is a light component. All of these things must be addressed. But there's also the nervous system piece. So that is where my friend Irene comes in and what we are talking about today in this conversation. Now, if you're watching this on Tuesday, June 25th, Irene's 21-day nervous system tune-up is on flash sale. It's $100 off. I will put a link down in the show notes for you if it is something that you're interested in getting. Now, if you don't necessarily have the budget for that, I'm also going to put all of my free resources in the show notes as well, because like I mentioned, I think that nutrition, light, all of the things that I talk about and try to provide resources for free on this podcast are immensely helpful, and that you're doing nervous system work to an extent when you begin to implement some of these principles. So the synergistic quality of what I teach and Irene teaches is very valuable and helpful. So whatever aspect of this conversation is helpful to you, I hope that you will share it with a friend or a family member. If you're over on YouTube, hit the like button, leave us a comment. And if you're on audio only podcast, make sure to head on over to Apple or Spotify and leave the show up to a 5-star review. I hope you enjoy this bonus episode today. And as a reminder, Irene's program is $100 off today only. And I'm actually running a Solstice Leptin Challenge. Our first live call is tomorrow, Wednesday, June 26th. So you can still get in on that for the next few hours. If you've been on the fence and you just want help with that lifestyle, nutrition, and light piece, I am running this program live and I am closing the doors tonight. I've let a few more people in, but our first call is tomorrow on Wednesday, June 25th. So those links are all down in the show notes. And I hope you really do enjoy this conversation between Irene and myself. And I will talk with you again soon. So thank you for coming and talking with me. It's so funny that we were just kind of chatting the other day. I'm seeing so many autoimmune cases. It's huge. And there, I mean, it's something that's kind of always been around that a lot of people have struggled with, but it seems more and more and more and more prevalent these days.
Yeah, there's so many reasons for that. I think there's some reasons we probably don't need to talk about, but I would say I have been seeing this in my private practice for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, Sarah, I know you have a problem with leaf blowers. Someone has a weed eater outside. So I'm going to close my window and
Go
not get the
ahead.
photons in for 45 minutes. It's all good.
Yeah,
It isn't.
there's a chance that a leaf blower could start at any
Yeah.
moment since I am outside-ish.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
So I'm like, okay, we'll just shut that window for now. It's okay. So no, I would say that, yeah, I mean, I was introduced to autoimmune with, if I really think about it as my own case
Hmm.
study, I've had so many troubles with inflammation since birth,
Hmm.
but they never named it
Right.
autoimmune. And in some ways I'm grateful for that because I just know I have to keep working on my health. I have to keep working on these inflammatory things, which were my skin, and that's a whole other story that we don't need to get into today. But when I was introduced to the work of somatic experiencing, which is Peter Levine's work, which I am trained in, I'm a colleague of Peter's and all that stuff, it became very clear when I learned about just how the nervous system really works.
Hmm.
More than just fight, flight, freeze,
Right.
more than digest, like the stuff that you have learned through my courses, like the intricacies
Yes.
of how our immune system repairs, how our gut lining repairs, how our body replenishes, all the things that you talk about as well. When I remember, I'll actually tell you the story. I was sitting in my SE training with my trainer at the time, Steve Hoskinson, and he drew this graph on something. And he showed the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, which we need a little bit of.
Yeah.
Like for us to sit up here and talk, we need a little bit of that healthy sympathy. Yeah, you're on your ball. If
Feet on
you
the
didn't,
ground,
yeah,
grounded,
if
sunlight.
exactly, if you
Yeah.
didn't have muscular tone from that, you would just flop over.
Right.
Of course, we know people that have struggles with chronic fatigue, they will represent with muscles that are flaccid, doughy. They don't have the tone.
Hmm.
And I don't mean, perfect muscular tone. I just mean the ability to up and get up and feel vigor. So I'm sitting in this class and I'm seeing this graph of sympathetic nervous system arousal, fight, flight. I can't really do it with my hands, but it's going up along the x-axis. And then the parasympathetic, which, to simplify, it helps slow the system
Right.
down. And there's a point where if those two stay on at the same time long enough, they cross over. I have
Hmm.
a video on this on my YouTube. And Peter, back in the 70s, did his PhD on this in biophysics, and he called it spillover. No one's really going to know what that term is because it's more of a biophysical term, but basically that means the system, like I've got my glass of water here. If I just kept pouring water into this, eventually it's going to spill all over me and it's going to
Right.
be a mess. And so what he discovered is in humans, we will mount a fight flight response, a threat response, which we need to
Yes.
do, right? We need that, but it should only last for a few seconds,
Right.
15 seconds at best. Obviously, we know that's not the case with most humans. So what happens? They're parasympathetic that slows down. It's a branch of the vagus that puts us into what we would call freeze, eventually collapse and shut down. It then is like, hey, there's so much fight flight going on. I need to come in and help. I
Hmm.
need to slow this caboose down. It's going way too fast. It's going to crash. But because of our higher brain, because of circumstance in the human world, and there's so many reasons for this, we keep these two, or three, I should say, survival mechanisms on: the fight, the flight, and then this high tone dorsal freeze of the vagus nerve, which essentially puts the system into like swamp mode.
Hmm.
That's not a technical term. It basically means there's very little oxygen, there's very little aliveness. I kind of think of a swamp water versus bubbly, effervescent water that has lots of oxygen in it, lots of hydrogen, that kind of thing. And so what happens is when the spillover happens, that's when the system shuts down. That's when the system can't repair. that's when the system doesn't go into true rest digest of the parasympathetic, which is where we recover.
Hmm.
You would know there's autophagy and all those fancy words that you talk about when you go to sleep at night and melatonin
Yep.
kicks in, I've done homework, right? So all these things kick in to repair. But if we are stuck in this fight, flight, freeze bind and this spillover, the system never has a chance to repair.
Right.
Now, we can get away with that in our youth for a certain amount of time, or as we've seen, you're familiar with, an injury can occur. It could be an accident, a massive shock, disaster, a medical injury, a toxin, a change in life environment, something that just shifts the system so drastically that it just can't keep going anymore. It can't
Yep.
recover. So to pull back, you asked about autoimmune and the nervous system. Essentially, our immune system needs healthy regulation of the nervous system, and it can't function when it's in this constant state of fight, flight, freeze, and then the elements that go with freeze, which are collapse and shutdown. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, to me.
I know it makes
Absolutely.
sense to you. So let me know where else you want me to go with this, because there's so many. This isn't a quick topic,
Right.
but what
Right.
I will say one thing first is that I have seen many of my students, and I know you've seen this in your practice, heal from things that doctors have said you are going to live your entire life like
Forever.
you're going to have to go on these medications. You're never going to be able to X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Things that we put labels on that we think are life sentences, like lupus
Yes.
and rheumatoid arthritis and IBS and all these.
Hashimoto's is the really big
Yes.
one,
Yeah.
and I actually had a lady in my group, I guess it was day before yesterday, she posted, she went to see her regular doctor about this, and the doctor said, I'm so sorry, like, you're just going to have to deal with this for the rest of your life, and your thyroid is essentially going to destroy itself, and the best we can do is suppress this, the best we can do is
Yeah.
manage it, but that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad she was in my group, because I have at least 5 women that I can name off the top of my head, including
Yeah.
myself, that have reversed Hashimoto's completely. I had antibodies 10 years ago,
Uh-huh.
have
Yeah.
never had them returned, just
Yeah.
did a TPO and TPA test when
Okay.
Dr. Sarah was here. We're running labs, zero,
Okay.
zero, right? And I have Becky in my group, who's a group administrator, had a full hysterectomy in her late
Mm.
30s and was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, high antibodies, complete remission, healthy weight. And so what I needed my ladies, and what they did right away, was jump into this thread where this woman was very discouraged and said, no,
Mm.
do not take this
Yeah.
diagnosis as a lifelong sentence. And,
Yeah.
one of the things that I know is really helpful for me, and that has been helpful for a lot of the group members, is kind of following in the tenets of my 21-day leptin program and doing all of those things.
Yeah.
But one thing that was essential for me in continuing to heal was doing your work and finding your work. And it
Yeah.
it actually really coincided with my discovery of the quantum and circadian
I
lifestyle,
remember.
was finding you, because
Yeah.
I was thinking about it last night. I was looking back on it. I'm like, I met Irene, I believe it was 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and I was still heavily immersed in like the nutrition
Yeah.
only,
Yeah.
and I interviewed you, and I was kind of like, And then I started having really my own challenges with infertility.
Mm-hmm.
My thyroid was giving me trouble once again, right? I had done a ton with nutrition and gotten to a good place, but then it was not holding, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't getting to that root cause. So quantum biology, circadian biology, and your work all at the same time was allowed me to essentially, again, reverse these thyroid issues I was having, and then have a healthy pregnancy in my
Yeah.
40s, and it's just, I think this nervous system piece is so crucial for people that are struggling with autoimmune condition. I've yet to meet one person
Mm.
that has an autoimmune condition that doesn't have some sort of nervous system dysregulation or trauma going
Oh
on.
yeah.
Like, I have not met anyone
Yeah.
in my, talking to thousands of people on a daily basis. I don't talk to all thousands of them on a daily basis, or I would be
Come
completely
on,
insane.
Sarah.
But I talk to a lot of
Yes.
people, and they all have some element of this nervous system dysregulation. And that's where I'm like, look, I can give you all of these strategies, and they go very well, right, with the nervous system piece, because we are orienting a
Yeah.
lot. We're doing a ton of orienting. We're doing a ton of disconnecting, unplugging from technology, and nourishing the body the way that it needs. But sometimes there is this other need to bring in the elements that you teach for someone to fully go into remission from these different conditions. And it's very, it's a hard thing. People don't necessarily want to look at it,
No,
because it is
no,
outside of the comfort zone, and it requires them to say, oh, it's not just this 10-step protocol that I can follow in order to
no.
fix this, right? It's a system that you have really put together,
Yeah.
right?
I like to often say, because there's so many ways I can go here, but if you go back to us when we're born, and I always go back to what happens to us when we're
Mm.
born, because when we're born, we do not have self-regulation. You know that because
No,
you
oh no,
kids.
because I was leaving you a message last night. I was like, I'm gonna have to go because the baby's crying, and I
Yeah,
put him down 2 hours ago,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
don't leave him in there crying for
No, of course not.
for a
Of
long
course not.
time. Like, I just don't do
Of
that.
course not, because that's what we would never do
Mm-mm.
that in the wild if we were wild animal mothers.
Right.
Like, never let your cubs sleep by themselves. When they feed, you don't say it's not time to feed yet. Like, so our autonomic nervous system is mammalian,
Mm-hmm.
and mammals are not able to self-regulate, especially human
Mm-hmm.
animals, when we're born, human mammals. And so when we go into that bonding, that co-regulation, that attachment with our primary caregiver, it doesn't have to be the mother, it could be whoever's looking after us. Our mom or our caregiver can't say when we're crying, I need you to do this breathing technique. I need you to do this tapping thing. I need you to do this cold plunge. I need you to,
Sit in front of the red light therapy panel.
yeah. And the thing is,
That would
there's
not go so well with my son.
no. And the thing is that, I have a cold plunge, I have a red light
Mm-hmm.
thing. I will play with my breath from time to time, but it's not to find regulation. And what has occurred, because a lot of people say, oh, I've tried nervous system work, it doesn't work. I've tried somatic work, it does somatic work, it doesn't work. I'm still where I am at. And I will say, yeah, that's true for many people because it depends what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go back again to what happens with infants, because if we didn't get that good attachment, co-regulation, safety, nurturing, being picked up as whenever we are crying as infants, because a lot of people get confused. It's like, oh, come on, we're raising weak people. It's like, this isn't about
No.
weakness. Actually, you build resilient people by treating babies in the way they need to be treated, which
Mm-hmm.
is with care, connection, attachment, all that thing, all that stuff. And so let's just say we didn't get that. And we had a fine enough home, and there was food and shelter. Even that little bit of no one's here. I'm all alone. I'm crying. Something's not right, and nobody's coming to help me. Sooner or later, I'm really simplifying this, but sooner or later, that little system is going to go into what we would call a freeze response, a collapse response, and they shut down and they stop requesting that attention. They also stop noticing their insides,
Mm.
because they're distressed because they're feeling something biological, hunger, temperature needs need to be regulated, fear, all these
Teeth.
things. Yes, oh my
That's
God.
my life right now.
Of course,
The canines
of
are all
course.
coming in. I'm
But
like,
that's
oh
friggin'
God.
painful,
It's really,
you know.
yeah, it's awful.
So, if there's a change in weather pressure, I'm really affected
Oh
by
yeah, my daughter,
pressure.
very much so.
Like,
Yeah,
no
the headaches.
matter, like, no matter what, I can tell when a storm is coming in, and no amount of anything changes it. I just have to wait for it to go through. And I've done
Mm-hmm.
all the work to try to figure this out, and I'm still hopeful that I'll shift it. But like, so babies are feeling that.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a car, they're going 100 miles per hour strapped to the seat. I would be screaming too if I was in that car seat, you know? So these things happen. And then because of our culture, our society, our domestication, as humans, we stop feeling our
Mm-hmm.
biology. And when we stop feeling our biology, we stop obviously listening to it, and then we don't give it what it needs. And by the by, I would say one of the biggest troubles, conundrums, choose your word, that we're in right now, is people just don't know how to listen to their somatic
No.
system, their
Mm-mm.
interoception. And so, yeah, we can do some of these management
Yeah.
techniques, containment and breath and going out in nature,
Pull on the
pulling
ears
on
and
the
the
ears, all the, you know, and to be fair, I get it. People are looking for something to soothe and solve their
Mhm.
absolute
Right.
agony. I get it. And that is not creating regulation in the nervous
Right.
system at that deep core level that you needed when you were an infant. And so what I do in my courses is way different, and
Yeah.
it can frustrate some people. And I know people give up because they don't get those quick results. Some do, but it takes time to
Yeah.
layer the foundation, just like your little baby James. He's not able to drive a car yet.
No.
It takes time.
Right.
He can't, I mean, I know he can run, but like when he's an infant, he's not doing all those things.
Mm-mm.
So we forget that it takes time to build this up. It doesn't take 30 years
No.
though to get to that,
No.
but it will depend on your
Mm-hmm.
history. It'll depend on how your environment is, how your
Mm-hmm.
relationships are, your access, I will admit, to time to have your own rest, to relax, to recover. The other thing, Sarah, is the education. I
Yes.
was just
That's
talking,
what was so huge for me is
yeah,
because I feel like a lot of this, like, tug on your
yeah,
ears and do this, it's going to stimulate your vagus nerve. And I know a lot of these people are like very well meaning,
of course,
but again, you're not going to, why is my system all jacked up
yeah,
every time I hear a freaking leaf blower?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Or, you know, like why is everything or my notifications on my phone make me so upset, you
yeah.
know? And it's not about never getting upset.
No,
That's what I
no,
say with people about the work that I teach.
no,
It's not about never having
no, no,
XYZ food again,
no,
never having a piece
no.
of birthday cake, never enjoying a dessert. It's about having that dessert or birthday cake and not wanting to binge on it for weeks at a time, or having it once and have your gut go crazy and your skin go crazy and your body go haywire. It's about creating resilience, right? So that's what I teach in my programs is like creating resilience of your body, and the nervous system is involved in that. And that's what you're essentially teaching is like if somebody has a stressful thing that happens, and I experienced this firsthand with a lot of the stuff my daughter's been going through, and you've been a great friend and, you know, able to just listen to hear what I'm like, oh my God, Irene, this is going on. And you're like, you're doing the work and you've done this
Yeah,
work. And it's not that you're not going to feel a certain way about it,
yeah,
have these feelings, but your body's not going to go into shutdown because you know how to be with it.
yep,
And that is what I think people think, that they're never supposed to get upset or they're never supposed to do these things. It's how your body
yeah,
responds to these events because of the kind of, I don't know if work is really the right word. I don't know how you like to frame it, but just the techniques, the things that you teach of making the system resilient and understanding that education
yeah,
piece.
yeah.
When you really understand how the system works, I think it's half of the healing is understanding how all of this works together, right?
It's essential. And the reason why is because we're human,
Right.
right? You couldn't teach a dog that's been abused the education of its nervous system to help tame it and make it
Mm-mm.
feel safe. It's all about action. It's all about connection, boundaries. again, it's like the baby. You can't tell your newborn baby, this is how your nervous system works. This is what it's about action. It's about how you are with them, how you connect with them. But for us as adults, humans, so, or late teenagers who are interested and keen, we don't realize how much we circumvent and go around, our body responses, our body sensations. Our conditioning is so insidious. It is probably, and I can't verify this with a stat, but it's like, I would say it's 95% of the reason why so many people struggle to continue at the level that I'm teaching, because they have been taught, if you don't get it done by this time, you fail. If you don't see perfect results, you fail. And then because of the way we've been taught by our parents or our school to be conditioned, versus how nature works, how there's a cycle, how there's ebbs and flows. I mean, it all comes down to flow and coherence. It's one of the first things I teach. We need the flow, but that's too abstract. And so I'll give you one example. So you mentioned autoimmune. I've mentioned that this is, if I was to go to a doctor and let them diagnose me, Sarah, you don't even want to know what I would be diagnosed with. It would be fibro, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic pain. I have a really strong gut, so there's no issue there. Now people are like, what? Irene, you're like showing up and doing things. Yes. And I also am able to decouple my symptoms from my brain.
Yeah.
So recently I've been definitely, I'm pretty sure, going through my infant trauma, which was massive chemical poisoning in utero. And the way I feel right now, and you wouldn't really know this, is I feel like I've been stung by a bee from the inside. I just feel completely inflamed. I'm stiff. I'm sore in my neck. My shoulders are creaking, all these things. And it sucks. And yet I know how to work with those symptoms and feel the sensations. I have a wonderful husband, so he helps and supports me as I need. But I know, because of what I've learned, wow, this is my early stuff when I was an infant and inflamed and unable to breathe properly and all these things. I'm feeling these. Like I woke up the other night completely congested for no reason. No out, like there's no pollen in the air. It's like, what is going on? And I tracked it, and I felt constriction in my throat. And if you look at the pictures of me when I'm a baby, which I'm not going to share because they're pretty brutal, like I was messed up when I came. I was jaundiced because her milk was poisonous. I turned yellow, like all these things. And so the thing is, if I didn't know what I know, I would go to the doctor, and what would they do? They would put me on steroids. They would put me on all these things. They would say, you need to go to a chronic pain specialist. You need to do this. And I'm like, I don't need to do that because I know this is old stuff leaving the building. But if we don't understand how these things get trapped, and they may come out, I've been doing this work for 20 years, right? Why is this coming out now? I think it's coming out because my orthopedic shock traumas that a lot of people know about, they have been resolved. So it's like I'm resolving these things one by one, layer by layer. And so now the biggest, hardest ones are starting to come through. And I just know that there's people that if they don't understand how this process works, they'll give up too soon.
Yeah.
And then I will say, the work you do has been what has helped me the most with this stuff, because I've worked on my traumas and all that sort of stuff. And when my hormones tanked a couple years ago, I know I talked to you about it, like I lost like half of my hair. It's like it just fell out. I'm like, what's going on? And it wasn't because I was eating shitty and all this stuff. It was just something was moving through my system in a weird way. And it was the circadian stuff. It was grounding. It was getting outside in the sun. All these things completely shifted, and everything has balanced. And now that that balancing is there, the old stuff can come up and out. So that's the other thing, is this process is not linear.
No.
and I always go back to the core systems. My immune system is so solid. My gut is solid. My mental clarity is solid, and I have energy, even though I have these symptoms of pain and inflammation. So it doesn't line up with the classic representation of chronic fatigue and, say, fibromyalgia. But I think what occurs is people, they overcouple the symptoms, right? They overcouple the symptoms with the mind, and then things just snowball. And then the mind psychosomatically can influence the nervous system. And that's where we have to be very careful, is like, okay, your mind is going down a rabbit hole of doom and gloom and helplessness. That's not going to work. You got to pull yourself out. And that's where resourcing and containment and all those things do come into play. I hope this is making sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's huge. And I apologize now they've gotten the chainsaw out.
That's okay.
Still,
We had chainsawing for 12 hours the other day in our
we've
backyard.
had
So it's all, I
it for
understand.
like 2 years with this
Oh
neighbor.
my
It's like it's a total nightmare. He's like the worst neighbor ever. If you're
God.
listening, no, I'm
I
kidding.
can hear a little bit
Yeah,
though, a
there's
little
a
bit.
chainsaw right outside my backyard. Beautiful. But I have resourcing
You do.
and containment. Um, no, I think that's the biggest thing I see really is that people are kind of just like attached to this diagnosis that they have. Kind of what
It's,
you've been saying is
yeah,
that you understand it is not you. You separate yourself from it, and
yeah,
you have the proper ways to work through pain and things that come up in your body. And I think that's the biggest thing for people is understanding that and being able to practically implement it, because it sounds good in theory, right? Just like
yeah,
I'm going to tug on my ears or ice my vagus nerve or this,
yeah,
that, or the other.
yeah,
You have to deal with why these things are
yeah,
happening for you in the first place,
yeah.
and
I
yeah,
want
I love,
I,
oh, go
let
ahead.
me add one thing, just one
Yeah.
thing. I know you've got to go at the top of the hour, but sometimes people ask the question, well, what's the point in working on this nervous system? You just mentioned all these uncomfortable things, Irene. Why would you sign up for that? And that's a great question. And I'm going to pull out some research now, which I rarely do, but we know through something called the ACE
Mm.
study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. This has been done in multiple continents, many, many times, like thousands and thousands of people. When we don't resolve these early childhood adversities, it will make us sick.
Yes. Yep.
And I don't just mean like a sniffly cold sick.
No.
I mean like cancer,
Mm-hmm.
heart disease,
Mm-hmm.
stroke, autoimmune. And right now, our environment is just pressing down on us with so many toxins,
Glyphosate,
stresses.
toxins,
Yeah,
just so, yeah. I mean, you got to have clean air and you got to have
yeah,
clean water as a
yeah.
basic,
And
and
that is difficult. Like our house in Vancouver, we had to, we had to install a very expensive filtration
oh, we did
system
the
because
same. We did a whole home
the
filtration
chlorine.
and air
Yeah,
doctors and a water distiller. Like we have the works because both of our kids have had,
yeah,
my son had skin issues when he was very little, which we've now,
mhm,
thank goodness, resolved. And my daughter's had all of her stuff,
yeah.
and
It's
it's,
it's hard to not be poisoned, and you
yeah.
have to really work darn hard at it. And I know that not everyone has the capacity to, invest in those things, but it's like whatever you can do to just get a little bit
Mm-hmm.
cleaner, a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Well, and
will
having your circadian system in balance, because
it
if your
balances.
circadian system is off,
Yeah,
those detox pathways can't
don't work.
open as a baseline
Yeah,
because our detox happens on a circadian rhythm. And so
that,
if you're blasting your body with artificial light at night, you
yeah,
can't detox
yeah,
baseline,
yeah.
so clean air, clean water,
Food.
circadian rhythms,
Yeah,
those are
mhm,
fundamentals, and proper nutrition, getting the right nutrients. Those are very, very fundamental. But
yeah.
then once you have that, that's where we need to
Nervous
look at some of these other
system. Yeah,
things because yeah, the same thing happened to me in my mid 30s. I had a very traumatic childhood. I've spoken about maybe half of it
mhm,
online.
mhm,
Maybe one day the whole
yeah,
story will come, but like at this point, I can just say I've had trauma with a big T in my life. And in my mid 30s, it was Hashimoto's,
yeah,
IBS, all of the things. And you look at pictures of me at that time, everything's
yeah,
inflamed. I had
yeah.
lipedema. My legs were really
It's
painfully
plain. Yeah,
inflamed to the point where you touch them and it hurt. And I've
yes,
reversed all of that.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just me. I've seen
Yeah.
so many people do the same. So it is very possible,
Yeah.
but you need to know this nervous system component is part of that equation.
Huge
It's
part.
got to be, you know?
Yeah. I would say, if you were to combine my work and your work and the quantum world and just get stuff clean within your household, within what you put, all of that, that is a massive portion of the healing journey. And as you know, and as I know, I was in fitness forever,
Mm-hmm.
and you too, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
Carrie, Bennett
13 years. Yeah,
also,
Carrie and I both had this
like
similar
yeah,
path. Yeah.
yeah, like I was in it for 25 years, and I compare it to that, and people know this, so I'll say this: it's like if you need to get fit, you're not just going to do 10 push-ups
No.
and 10 crunches 3 times a week. It No, and that's fine that we think we have to have it organized in that way. The nervous system work is the same. If you have some management tools, not stools, management tools that you do a couple times a week, there's nothing wrong with that. But that is not integrated into your life. We want to have regulation so that we don't have to do any of those tools. Just like when you have a good lifestyle with fitness, it's not a burden to work out. You
Right.
want to
You
do it.
want to, you have the energy. That's what people always ask me when they do
Yeah,
my leptin
yeah,
program is like, when can I start working out again? I'm like, do you feel like it? You
yeah,
have energy to do it? Let's
exactly.
let's add it in and let's do it in a way that's hormonally supportive. But if you're feeling like you want to work out, this is really a good sign
Yeah,
that you're healing and good things are happening.
exactly.
So yeah.
So
Yeah. And
that,
someone says they were diagnosed with lipedema and they did a trauma score. And I liken any kind of swelling or inflammation in the body. The body's
yeah,
losing energy in some way, and the body is trying to protect you. I think lipedema is your body is trying to protect you and
yeah,
insulate you from
yeah.
something. I don't know what that is, but there is something that your
What I'll
body is trying to protect you against.
100%. And what I'll add is it is basically, if I take it from the nervous system perspective, it's that fight, flight, freeze in battle with each other.
Yes.
And this is where migraine headache comes in,
Oh yeah.
chronic menstrual syndrome, IBS.
Yes.
It's this cycling of fight, flight, and freeze
Yes.
confused. We need them to work I'm using my hands, in a flow. I'm one, other, pumping, everything goes in the right direction. But when you have dysregulation, it's like a strobe light concert and everybody's on acid.
Yeah.
And it's just like everything's crazy, right? And
Might have
there's
been
no
fun younger years, but now
exactly.
no.
And this is something that, I remember just after my SE training, I remember there's about a week, Sarah, where I could hardly walk. My knees swelled up,
Mm,
my ankles full up. It made no sense, but I was also in the midst of working on my surgical trauma.
mm.
So my system was remembering the inflammation from my early 20s that I probably never emotionally connected to. I had my surgeries, I did the ice, I did the compression, I did the
Yeah.
physical
Yeah.
things, but I didn't process the mental,
Mm-hmm.
emotional, spiritual, this sucks and I want to cry because I didn't have the support in my family system. I was like, I can do it all and I can drive to my appointments with my crutches and all these
Mm-hmm.
things. And I was in a freeze.
Yeah.
And so as I was defrosting, there was this just incredible stiffness, pain, inflammation. And again, if I had gone to the doctor, what would they have said? Rheumatoid arthritis.
Steroids.
And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
left. It went away.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
we don't
I know.
understand these cyclings of the nervous system, we won't know that that's what it is,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so, at the end of the day, it's so important to learn about these elements in
Mm-hmm.
us because we're not living in a natural world.
No.
Even
No.
if we get into the circadian stuff, which everyone should, by the way, if you're not already, if people on my channel are watching, even if you get into all of that, it won't get rid of the stored, trapped survival stress
Mm-mm.
that is there from when you were 5 or when you were in utero or
Mm-hmm.
from your generations, because we know that also follows into our system is our generational traumas.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
biased, but I know that it works, and I also know that you know that it works.
it does. I mean, I
Yeah,
tell people because Carrie and I, we have our fertility
yeah,
course and I mean, I just got 2 emails last week of women who had multiple miscarriages, multiple losses, failed IVF. Both of them are actually due to give birth in the next week or so here. And that is one of the things Carrie and I did teach in that course, or do teach in that course, is that we do all these protocols to support
yeah,
healthy fertility,
yeah.
and it works.
Oh yeah,
But this piece that sometimes that's still not working, it is the nervous system component. And I know for sure for me, it was crucial in allowing me to get
oh,
pregnant and give birth at 43. You know, it was crucial that I work
yeah.
on this piece. And
I I
it
have
helped me as a
two.
new mom
It's
too.
amazing.
I mean, this time
Oh
with
God, yeah, yeah,
you know, a baby now versus 16 years ago has been like night and day.
yeah,
Like when he is having his moment, because babies do and
yeah,
they need you, I don't
yeah.
go into shutdown.
No,
I'm like, I'm
you're attacked.
able, right.
Yeah,
I'm able to be with him. And it's just, yeah, it's a
I,
beautiful
I
thing.
I have two students right now who are pregnant who tried, and one miscarried and one just couldn't get pregnant. I don't know if she miscarried, and they're like, this is completely different. And I have two other students who've just had babies, and the attachment, the ease, the natural birth. I've actually interviewed one of them. Like she had her baby in the shower.
I did, I almost didn't get to the hospital. I was
And that's how
in
it should
traffic and I
be.
was like, oh my God, this
Ah,
is going to happen here.
coming out.
He was
Yeah.
3 hour,
Yeah.
3 hour
Yeah.
labor. So
And this is
easy.
how it should be.
Right.
It should be like that. And we've met, I mean, that's a whole other topic,
Yeah.
Sarah. We can do that another day.
Yeah.
We, we've medicalized birth
Yeah.
because we're conditioned. We're conditioned because of the laws and rules that have been instilled
Yeah.
into us from, thousands of years of domestication
Oh
and then
yeah.
industrialization. Like these are the things I think about. I'm not just about giving you a somatic
Right.
exercise to open your friggin'
Right.
hips, right?
Yeah.
It's like this is a cultural
Yeah.
generational thing, and it doesn't have to be that
Right.
hard. I feel that if we can get the next generation of mothers having babies with
Yes.
regulation, we're not going to have, like, our kids aren't going to have to spend 30 years healing the way you and I
Right.
are. Wouldn't that
Right.
be
Be
amazing? You
amazing.
know?
Yeah. It really would be. It would be. So
Yeah,
I hope the right people hear this.
I hope
And
so too.
today is June, what, 25th, correct?
Yeah,
So if you're
yeah.
watching this, I'm going to rip this down. It'll stay on my Instagram for anybody watching on Instagram. It'll stay on Instagram, but I'm also going to rip it down, put it on my YouTube channel and my audio only podcast. And you're having a flash sale on your
Today.
nervous system tune up today, which you never put this on sale, but this is a program I started with
Yeah.
and that introduced me to all of your work, which
Mm-hmm.
this got me like, oh my gosh, I've been missing this my whole life. And this is on sale today. There's a link in my bio if you're over on Instagram. And I will put a keyword Irene. So if you're watching the replay, you can get the link auto sent to you.
Thank you.
So yeah, check it out if you are wanting to dive into this work. And I'm doing a live Leptin reset right now. My door's closed tonight at midnight.
Do
So
them at the same
yes,
time. That's great.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's beautiful synergy
Yeah.
and totally
Yeah.
doable to do them
Yeah.
together because it's not
Yeah.
hours a day of work
No,
that you have to do.
no, no.
It's
And
very
it
simple.
doesn't have to be done in 21 days. Some people take six
No,
months, six
yeah,
months to do it. It's like, it's just, if you haven't done this and you'd like to save some money, get in now. My only asking is do the work. Don't just let it sit in your inbox.
great.
Thank you,
Awesome. Well, all
Sarah.
the links are up in my bio for my solstice and for Irene. So check those out. And thanks for meeting with me. I'm going to go get on podcast with Carrie now.
Say hi to Carrie for me.
I will. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.